Hello everybody, JP from JP's Aviation here, and welcome back to another video. After the Second World War ended, air travel really started to take off, especially in the United States, with companies like Boeing, who was a wartime manufacturer, alongside Douglas and a couple others. These manufacturers took great strides in aviation technology, with aircraft like the Constellation during the war and aircraft after the war, like the Boeing 377 Stratocruiser, and then even later on the 707 and the DC-8. However, across the Atlantic, Europe had very bad luck with aviation, especially in the jet age, up until Airbus in the 1970s. After the war, Europe was devastated, and no one was cooperating with each other, and on a continent the size of Europe, with so many countries, it wasn't very good for the aviation industry. This led many small companies like Hawker Siddeley of England and Sud of France to make their own aircraft, which all basically failed. We really start to see Europe suffer in the jet age. Companies did try to make jet aircraft, and in fact they were very important jet aircraft like the Carvel, but these aircraft weren't as successful as their American counterparts. Let's look at the Boeing 727 and the Hawker Siddeley Trident. Both were tri-jets with roughly the same capacity. Now, both of these aircraft were designed in the early 60s, but by 1978, Hawker Siddeley stopped producing the Trident, and there were only 117 made. Over at Boeing, the 727 had 1,425 deliveries and was still taking orders for it. It would be 6 years later when Boeing stopped production of the 727. Now, it isn't for lack of trying. Hawker Siddeley was in discussions with American Airlines. American wanted an aircraft with the range increase, and this aircraft was built, but the airline did decide to go for the 727. And there were other times when airlines thought that the Trident was a much better aircraft than the 727, but ordered the 727 anyways. There was also a lot of government intervention, many times causing project delays. BEA even tried to get the 727 and the 737 to fill the roles of the 111 and the Trident, but the British government didn't let them, and they were forced back to another Trident variant. First big example of European cooperation was Concorde, which did lead the way for Airbus. However, Concorde was one of the most ambitious projects of the 21st century, and it didn't sell that well, even with interest and orders from airlines in the United States, like TWA and United. But these orders were obviously canceled. Now, the success of Concorde isn't just in how many orders it got. It should be on breaking into the United States market with the new technology. As before, the Europeans were making aircraft that could hardly compete with the US-built aircraft, but now the Europeans were able to make a more advanced aircraft, and airlines took that opportunity to buy the aircraft. In the 1960s, European aviation companies were working on 200-seat aircraft. However, the companies knew that if they were going to do it alone, they would not achieve the amount of sales they would need to make any money from it. So they came together to make this 200-seat aircraft. One of those proposed aircraft was the HBN 100, proposed by many different companies, including Hawker Siddeley. Now, this aircraft was never built, but it was very similar to the A300. The governments of Europe also took great interest in making another joint aircraft. They saw a gap in the market that airlines like Air France and American Airlines were interested in filling, a twin-engined wide-body aircraft, as the American manufacturers were working on tri-jets at the time, like the L-1011 and DC-10, to satisfy ETOP regulations. And in 1967, French, German, and British leaders met and agreed on more cooperation to make a, quote, Airbus. Shortly after this, they started to design the new aircraft. So, that's going to wrap it up for the history of the Airbus A300. Part 2 will be coming out in the coming weeks, so don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next Friday on JP's Aviation. Goodbye.